What happens when a prince walks onto the set of Good Morning America expecting admiration, only to find himself confronted with uncomfortable truths? That question was answered the moment Prince Harry sat across from Michael Strahan in what was meant to be a standard morning show interview. It began ordinarily enough. Polite smiles, careful pleasantries, the usual back and forth that keeps daytime television humming along. But beneath the surface, tension coiled tighter with every exchange, and before long, the facade of cordiality fractured in full view of millions. By the time it was over, Harry had lost his composure, the audience was stunned, and Strahan had done what no host before him dared. He ended the interview and asked a royal guest to leave the studio. The studio that morning glowed with the warm, familiar brightness of early-day television. Cameras glided silently across the polished floor, their red tally lights blinking like watchful eyes. Set pieces gleamed under the overhead rigs, and producers murmured last-second cues into discreet earpieces. On one side of the curved anchor desk sat Michael Strahan, calm, poised, the picture of steady professionalism. On the other sat Prince Harry, adjusting the cuff of his navy blazer, glancing at his reflection in the monitor. He appeared restless, the faintest confident smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Prince Harry," Michael began, smiling warmly for the cameras, "it's an honor to have you here this morning." Harry responded with a clipped nod. "Please," he said, though the tone lacked genuine warmth. Trying to ease into the interview, Michael continued, "You've been in the U.S. for some time now. A lot of people are curious. How's life treating you on this side of the pond?" Harry shifted subtly. "It's refreshing. Less noise, fewer expectations. Here I'm just myself, free from the old circus." A gentle ripple of approval moved through the studio audience. Michael nodded thoughtfully. "I can imagine that's a big change, but some might say the circus followed you. Netflix deals, memoirs, high-profile interviews. You've been very visible since stepping away from royal life." Harry's eyes flicked upward, the smirk fading. "Visibility doesn't mean exploitation, Michael," he replied coolly. "People told my story for me for years. I think it's more than fair I get to speak for myself." "Absolutely," Michael agreed, his tone measured. "But when you're in the public eye, people often feel entitled to question your version of events." Harry's posture stiffened. "That's the problem, isn't it? Everyone feels entitled. Every emotion becomes a headline." Michael leaned forward slightly. "Fair enough, but I think many would agree it's a complicated line to walk. Only for those who don't understand what it's like to be born into a world where every move is recorded, you wouldn't know what that's like." Michael raised his brows. "You're right," he said evenly, "but I do know what it's like to live under scrutiny. I was an athlete for decades." Harry gave a tight smile. "Yes, but you chose that. I didn't." That comment shifted the atmosphere. A low murmur rolled through the audience. Michael took a breath. "True, but you choosing this interview. When you choose the platform, people have the right to ask questions." "Or not," Harry snapped. The audience tittered nervously. Trying to keep things light, Michael pressed on. "Looking back on your departure from royal life, is there anything you would have done differently?" "Yes," Harry said instantly. "I'd have left sooner." Michael blinked. "That's a strong answer." "Honesty usually is," Harry said. Michael continued carefully. "What about your family? Do you think those bridges can ever be rebuilt?" Harry's face hardened. "I'm not here to talk about reconciliation." Michael hesitated. "Do you ever miss them?" That was the breaking point. Harry's jaw flexed, his voice dropped to a cold, measured edge. "If you lost your mother the way I did, if you were hounded since birth, you wouldn't sit there asking me about nostalgia." The studio fell silent. Michael apologized gently, but Harry cut him off sharply, accusing him of making assumptions and chasing reactions. The warmth was gone. The professionalism remained, but it was brittle now, mechanical. And as the tension thickened, unfolding live on national television, viewers across the country felt the same thing. The slow, undeniable collapse of civility.
The moment was no longer an interview. It had become a standoff. Michael leaned back slightly in his chair, hands folding together in a calm, steady gesture meant to cool the rising heat between them. "I don't think anyone here sees you as a villain," he said gently, "but maybe they see someone who's still angry." Harry's eyes flashed with a sharp, unfiltered intensity. "Wouldn't you be?" he snapped. "After everything I've endured, everything I've lost?" Michael paused, choosing his response carefully. "Maybe," he admitted. "But anger only helps if it leads to healing. And I think that's what people want to see. They want to see you healed." Harry looked away, jaw tense, then back again with a bitterness that flickered like lightning behind his expression. "Maybe I'm tired of being your redemption project." The cameras caught it, the sudden shift, the unmistakable resentment tightening his features. For the first time that morning, Michael Strahan's practiced composure wavered. Not much, but enough that the crew stiffened, enough that the audience sensed a tremor. The calm before the storm was gone. The electricity in the studio had changed, and even the lights felt hotter, the cameras closer, as if the air itself were bracing for impact. Michael maintained his posture, glancing down at his notes briefly before returning his gaze to Harry. He had handled tense political interviews, celebrities in denial, athletes mid-scandal, but this felt different. The resistance radiating from across the desk was not mere discomfort, it was defiance sharpened into something almost combative. "Let's shift gears," Michael said, adopting a lighter tone. "You and Megan have spoken about wanting to use your platform for good. What does that look like for you now?" Harry adjusted in his seat, crossing one leg over the other with a certain practiced superiority. "It looks like impact, Michael. Real impact. We're building initiatives focused on compassion, mental health, and reshaping how people think about privilege and duty." Michael nodded politely. "That sounds admirable, though if I may, some critics say that while your intentions are noble, the delivery can feel a bit self-centered, that your projects often revolve around your own experiences more than helping others share theirs." The air chilled. Harry's smile vanished instantly. "Critics," he repeated, dripping contempt. "You mean the people who make money tearing others down? People who've never done a day of actual service?" Michael kept steady. "I'm talking about journalists, commentators, and viewers who follow your story. Many respect what you do, but others feel..." "Others feel what?" Harry cut in sharply. "That I should stay quiet? That I shouldn't speak about my own life because it makes them uncomfortable?" His voice rose. The audience shifted uneasily in their seats. Michael lowered his tone, controlled and patient. "No one is saying you shouldn't speak, but when you share personal details publicly, people will have opinions. That's part of the trade-off." "Trade-off?" Harry scoffed. "Interesting word for exploitation." Michael blinked. "Exploitation?" Harry leaned forward, voice tightening like a wire pulled too far. "You're part of it, you know it." He gestured toward the cameras, the crew, the glowing studio. "This entire system profits off my pain. You get your headlines, your viral clips, your ratings, and then you ask me why I'm defensive?" A few audience members gasped. Michael inhaled slowly. "Harry, I'm not profiting off your pain. I'm doing my job. This is a conversation." "Conversation," Harry laughed, bitter and humorless. "No, this is an ambush. You came with an agenda." Michael sat up straighter, voice firming. "There's no agenda. These are questions any journalist would ask." Harry ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. "No, these are the same tired narratives about my family, my wife, our choices. You people are obsessed." The phrase, "you people," sucked the air out of the room. A murmur rippled across the audience. Michael pressed on steady. "Our viewers are curious. You left the royal family to escape the spotlight, yet you've done documentaries, interviews, books. Doesn't that keep you in the very spotlight you say you're fleeing?" Harry's eyes flashed again. "You think you're clever, don't you? Sitting there with your polished tone and teleprompter questions. Think you can trap me with word games?" Michael smiled slightly. "I don't need to trap you. You're doing a fine job of that yourself." Gasps and muffled laughs filled the studio, not mocking, but startled. Harry stiffened. "That's funny to you?" "No," Michael replied calmly. "Sometimes honesty sounds like humor when people don't expect it." Harry leaned in, glare sharp. "You think you're above me because you're an interviewer? Because you poke at my life like it's a sideshow?" "Not at all," Michael said. "I'm asking questions any audience member would ask. You came to talk. I'm giving you that space." "I didn't come to be interrogated." "This isn't an interrogation. It's accountability. There's a difference." Silence fell, thick, heavy. Harry gave a short, sarcastic clap. "Accountability. That's rich coming from a morning show host." Michael smiled politely. "And yet, here you are on a morning show." Another hush, another ripple of tension. Harry looked away, jaw tense, then back again with a bitterness that flickered like lightning behind his expression. "Maybe I'm tired of being your redemption project."
I talk about trauma and suddenly I'm whiny. I talk about mental health and suddenly I'm hypocritical. Harry's voice echoed through the tension-thick studio. Michael nodded slowly, letting the words settle before responding. "That's tough," he said quietly. "But you can't control how people interpret you, Harry. You can only control your reaction to it." Harry's eyes snapped back to him, sharp and accusing. That's the kind of self-help garbage people pay to hear from someone who's never actually suffered. Even Michael's patience faltered at that. He leaned in, his voice still calm, but edged now with something steelier. "You don't know what I've been through, and I won't pretend to know what you have. But attacking me won't make your story more believable. It just makes you look defensive." Harry's expression flickered, panic for a heartbeat, quickly smothered by anger. "I'm not defensive. I'm just sick of being painted as some spoiled prince who doesn't understand the world." Michael exhaled slowly. "Then show people who you really are. That's why you're here, isn't it?" Harry glared. "You want me to perform? To play the reformed royal for your morning show ratings?" Michael's voice stayed firm. "I want you to be honest. Not perform, not attack, just talk." Harry let out a bitter laugh. "You don't want honesty. You want sound bites." "And what do you want?" Michael countered softly. Harry hesitated before saying more quietly, "To be understood." "Then stop fighting everyone who tries," he replied. The line landed like a hammer. A low murmur rippled through the audience. The control in the room had shifted, visibly, unmistakably. Harry's face reddened. He looked down, then up again, with fury simmering beneath the surface. "You think you can psychoanalyze me on air?" he demanded. Michael didn't look away. "No, but I think the audience can see what's happening all by themselves." And that was the moment everything began to unravel. Harry leaned back in tight-lipped silence, eyes burning. Michael adjusted his notes, more for composure than necessity. Whatever diplomacy existed earlier had evaporated. From here on out, this wasn't conversation, it was collision. The studio felt charged, the air thick with static. Even the camera operators held their breath. "Let's talk about something positive," Michael said gently, as though trying to repair a bridge mid-collapse. "You've done impactful work around mental health. Millions have responded to your campaigns. Do you feel like you're making the impact you hoped for?" Harry gave a humorless laugh. "Impact? You tell me, Michael. Every time I speak about mental health, I'm accused of exploiting it. Every time I talk about trauma, I'm called a victim. Michael nodded carefully. People can appreciate your advocacy and still question the way it's presented. There's a difference between raising awareness and making it about myself. Harry cut in, voice rising. I've heard that one before. I wasn't going to say that, Michael replied evenly. But I think the public Harry slammed his hand on the table. Microphones rattled. Audience members jumped. Public perception? That's the poison I escaped. I'm not living for tabloids or Twitter threads or bored morning show viewers. The audience gasped loudly. A producer gestured urgently to lower mics, but the tension was already roaring through the room. Michael set his papers aside. Harry, he said evenly, no one here is attacking you. But when you come on a show like this, people expect honesty. You're a public figure. That comes with questions. Honesty. You please. You don't want honesty. You want entertainment. You want the little viral clip of the angry prince. That's not true, Michael replied, tone steady but firmer now. You agreed to this conversation, and I've shown you respect from the moment you walked in. Respect? You call this respect? Asking about my family, my choices, my wife? Nothing about that is respect. I'm asking the questions everyone else is asking, Michael said calmly. That's journalism. Harry's laugh was cold, contemptuous. Journalism? That's rich, from a former football player turned talk show host. The audience murmured, shocked. Michael's jaw flexed. He inhaled slowly before responding. You're right. I'm not a royal, or a soldier, or a prince. I'm someone who worked my way up from nothing, and I treat every guest on this show with respect and fairness. That's more than I can say for how you're treating this crew today. Harry shifted uneasily. You don't understand what I've lived through. You're right, Michael said quietly. I don't. But maybe that's the problem. You've convinced yourself that no one can. And the studio went silent.
The silence in the studio had turned absolute, heavy, unforgiving, the kind that swallowed sound and magnified tension. Every camera was trained on Harry, his face tight, his composure unraveling by the second. Michael's last words were still hanging in the air when Harry finally spoke, his voice cracking despite his effort to steady it. You think this is easy? He said, breath uneven. You think I want to sit here and explain myself to people who've never walked a day in my shoes? Michael leaned in slightly, his tone calm but resolute. No one's asking you to defend yourself. We're asking you to connect. That's what this was supposed to be. A chance to show people who you really are. But instead, you're proving every headline right. Harry's expression darkened, a storm gathering. You think you know me? Because you read a handful of articles? You have no idea who I am, Michael, and you never will. Michael didn't budge. Then show us. Don't yell, don't deflect, just be real. Harry let out a strained, bitter laugh. You want real? Fine, here's real. I've been betrayed by people I trusted. I've watched the press tear my wife apart. I buried a mother who died because the world couldn't get enough of headlines about her. And here I am again, sitting across from another man in a suit, trying to twist my pain into a morning segment. The words cut through the studio like a blade. Even Michael's expression softened for a moment before he spoke again. Harry, I am truly sorry for what you've been through. I mean that. But that doesn't give you the right to attack everyone who asks a question. Harry shook his head sharply. You don't get it. You never will. Americans pretend to care about empathy, but the minute someone like me speaks up, they call it whining. No one called you a whiner, Michael replied quietly. But right now, you're not helping yourself. Harry's voice dropped into a venomous growl. You're lecturing me about perception? You're just another cog in the same machine. All smiles on camera, all business off stage. You're no better than the tabloids. Something in Michael's face changed, the patience thinning, the restraint tightening.
When he spoke, his tone carried an unmistakable authority. "Enough!" Harry blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said enough. You've made your point repeatedly, and I've let you speak even when you were disrespectful, but I won't sit here and let you insult me or this show." The audience erupted in a chorus of gasps and murmurs. Harry stared up at him, breathing hard. "You think this is easy? You think I can kick you out? Do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are, and I know what behavior crosses the line. You're very close." Harry let out an incredulous laugh. "This is unbelievable." "No, what's unbelievable is that someone who talks so much about respect shows so little of it the moment he's challenged." Cameras captured everything: Harry's clenched fists, Michael's unwavering composure, and the crackling tension thickening the air. The warm, familiar set of Good Morning America had transformed into something else entirely, a battleground of wounded pride, simmering anger, and clashing principles. Harry straightened, his voice low and dangerous. "You think this makes you look strong, kicking a guest off your little show? This is about respect, something you abandoned the moment you sat down." Harry slammed his hand on the desk. "You Americans think you can talk down to me because I won't play your media games." Michael's voice stayed controlled, but his words hit harder than any shout. "No one owes me anything, but you chose to be here, and the second you didn't like the direction, you turned this into a personal attack." Harry's voice rose again, cracking at the edges. "Your questions are insulting. You pretend to care about trauma while you mock me in front of millions." "No one is mocking you, but maybe people struggle to take your advocacy seriously because every answer sounds like a lecture. You talk at people, not to them." Harry froze, eyes burning, jaw tight, the words landing deeper than he expected. "You think you can psychoanalyze me?" he whispered. Michael shook his head slowly. "No, but I know what accountability looks like, and right now, you're running from it." That was the moment that Harry's composure finally shattered. "Accountability?" Harry repeated, incredulous. His voice rose sharply, cracking under the strain. "I've given everything up for honesty, my family, my country, my peace, and you sit there like some smug judge pretending I'm the problem." The studio sank into another suffocating silence. No coughs, no shuffling, not even a nervous laugh. Every word felt like a live grenade rolling across the glossy floor. Michael's response came slow, steady, and measured. "You know," he began, "I've interviewed soldiers who've lost limbs, parents who've buried their children, survivors of traumas far beyond anything I can truly imagine." He paused, letting the weight of those examples settle. "And do you know what they all shared? Grace, humility, the ability to speak about their pain without turning it into a weapon." Harry's face flushed a deep, burning red. "How dare you compare me to—" Michael cut him off, his cone suddenly sharp enough to slice the air. "You talk about suffering, but every time someone challenges you, you explode. You've confused privilege with persecution." That was the breaking point. Harry shot to his feet, the chair screeching loudly across the studio floor. The sound made several audience members flinch. His microphone cord went taut as he jabbed a shaking finger at Michael. "You don't get to lecture me. You don't get to sit there in your fancy suit on your little morning show and tell me how to live my life." Michael stayed seated, but the calm in his face was now hard, unyielding. "Then why are you here, Harry? Why come on to a show if you can't handle questions?" Harry trembled, whether from rage or humiliation, no one could tell. He said, "Because I thought this was a conversation, not an interrogation." "It was," Michael replied, standing now, "until you decided it wasn't." Harry's breathing turned fast, ragged. "You're twisting everything I say." "No," Michael said, "I'm repeating your words." Harry pointed again, furious. You know what your problem is, Michael? You think you're some moral authority because you smile for the cameras, but you're just another performer in this shallow country, pretending to care about the truth while you cash your checks and go home to your perfect life. A collective gasp rippled through the studio. Even in the unpredictable world of live television, that line crossed the boundary everyone recognized. Michael's expression hardened completely. When he spoke, the calm in his voice carried undeniable steel. "Harry, you need to stop." Harry scoffed, mocking him. "What are you going to do? Cut me off?" "Yes," Michael said simply. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." The silence was immediate and absolute. Harry stared at him, stunned. "You're joking." "I'm not," Michael replied. "This interview is over." "You can't do that. I'm Prince Harry." "Not here," Michael said. "Here, you're a guest who's forgotten his manners." Harry's face turned crimson. "This is outrageous. I'm not finished." Michael raised a hand toward the control booth. "We are." In seconds, the live feed cut. The bright red on-air light blinked off, replaced by an emergency advertising bumper. But the studio cameras kept rolling, silently capturing everything for internal records. Harry glared at Michael, chest heaving. "You'll regret this." Michael didn't flinch. "No, I'll sleep fine tonight." With a furious yank, the prince tore off his microphone and tossed it onto the desk. "You people disgust me. You pretend to be fair, but you're all the same. Parasites." Michael nodded once. "Then you're free to leave." Harry hesitated, long enough to realize the cameras might still be watching, then stormed off the set, footsteps pounding down the hallway like distant thunder. The studio remained frozen until the door slammed shut. Finally, Michael exhaled, rubbed his temples, and murmured, "That might have been the most exhausting 10 minutes of my career." Hours later, the clip would explode across the internet. Headlines would blare. "Prince Harry storms off GMA set. Michael Strahan ends interview mid-broadcast." Analysts would argue who crossed the line, but those in the room knew exactly when things shifted, when entitlement replaced charm, and when Michael Strahan made the rarest move in live television. He ended the conversation.